Hi, friends. It's Kate. Let's create today. So, if you ever find yourself with a bunch of paint left over on your palette after a project, if you want to use up your paint without wasting it, a great way to do that is to make a quick background, which I actually had planned this to be a really fast background on paper, but ended up doing some doodles and other things like you'll see later. So, I'm starting off with some of the paints I had left over. I have a pink and a purple, a green that I mixed, a white, and I think I've got some brown on there, some burnt umber. But I will paste a link in the description below on supplies that I use. But I'm just kind of going around with a dry brush, doing sort of a block pattern and just using up and spreading out the paint wherever I can, getting some good coverage and not really having any kind of plan in mind yet, but just seeing where it kind of takes me. I just want to make sure that I'm getting all the paint used up. And so here I go with it. So I'm working with three different brands of paint today in several colors. I have the 12 shades of gray, violet gray. I have creative inspirations. I'm using burnt umber and also sky blue. And Liquitex Basics, I have their rose pink. And I really love that rose pink color. And the 12 shades of gray, that violet gray that I have on there, it's a really nice deep color that's kind of a neutral. So I'm just kind of spreading around everything I've got left there on the palette. And I think I've got some leftover gesso on there that I'm using up as white. I also have some titanium white that's Liquitex as well. And just using up what I can. End up pouring out some more gesso to get some more white on there because I ran out pretty quickly. So I don't know how many of you might do this, and I'm wondering how all of you use up your leftover paints and what kind of things do you like to make with them. I really like making some background papers and using them in collage and other projects. And I've got a couple of things coming up that I'm going to be using some different pieces that I've painted before in. And it's just, you never know what you might make. And it's great to kind of experiment a little bit. So I just ended up seeing what I could make here and was pretty happy with the result. And it was a lot of fun. And I went a lot further than I had originally planned. So over to the side, I've also got some matte medium that I am mixing together with a little bit of that sky blue. And y'all know how I love my glazes. I just can't get enough. So I'm just kind of going over the top of all of these colors to bring them together and kind of knock them back just a little bit because I had decided to go ahead and make some flowers over the top. So I didn't want it to be too much with the busyness of all of the dry brushing. And so I'm adding some blue. I really love that sky blue. I think if I had to pick a favorite color, it probably would be like a blue green. And I use a lot of that in what I do. And so I'm kind of looking it over, finding some extra spots that I might have missed, and finishing up with the glaze. And I know some of you might be wondering, why doesn't she tape down her paper? And I don't want to lose any of my edges. Plus, it's easy to turn around if I want to. So I'm just grabbing some stencils to go over quickly. I have a little stencil set that I got on Amazon, and they're different textures and some flowers and things like that. They're kind of these small 4 or 5 inch wide, and I can link to those below in the description. But They're really nice to use. They're simple. I think on Amazon there must be just thousands and thousands of stencils. There's stencils at the craft store, and there's just an unimaginable amount of patterns and grunge and textures and images that you can do. So the sky's really the limit. And stencils, they're just so great with adding texture to a piece. And so I'm going over it with some gesso, just sort of lightly in different areas to break up that a little bit and add some more white highlights and give it some texture in the background. And honestly, if I stopped right there, it probably would be kind of a cool little collage piece. But of course, I keep going because I never know when it's finished. It's so easy to get carried away with your projects. But that's why it's so fun. And of course, I can't resist getting another stencil to go over it. And so with this one, I'm mixing just a little bit of that sky blue in with the gesso to give it a little bit of a different color, but still very, very light. So most of the contrast is going to be with the shapes versus color between the two stencils. But it's just enough to get that little bit of a difference. And this is from that same set that I got. I think it might have been 15 or 20 different stencils, and they've lasted quite a while. I use them quite a bit, and I've definitely got my favorites. I think everybody does if you do anything with stencils. But I'd like to try to make some of my own. One of the things I really like is working with unique items, and sometimes it's really good just to make what you want to use and you can reuse it over and over and it's only yours. So I'm painting in some circles with gesso just to give myself a little bit of a clean canvas to do my flowers. And I'm kind of deciding where I want the layout. And I'm also adding some twigs and sort of blocking out where I want things to go later. And it gives me a nice clean surface for my color so it really pops out from the background, especially since I'm going to be using a similar palette since I'm clearing my palette of used paint. I think the only other color I get is a little bit of yellow to mix up a green for the stems later. So I'm just kind of blending together some of the pinks and purples I have on my palette with some white and different colors. I want to get a good variety as I kind of paint in these little abstracty petals, but I want some color variation there with what I've got so that it gives you some visual interest. And I'm just kind of going around doing some different mixes on my palette and just adding some here, adding some white or adding purple or some of that rose pink. And then I also want each of the flowers to be just a little bit different from each other. So I'm trying to put in maybe a little bit more pink in one or more purple in another as I go around and add different brush strokes to the flowers. And then I make sure to add some darker colors for some contrast there. And then I'll add some white also to the outside and some of the other petals. Even that sky blue is not safe from blending. Painting is just so relaxing, and it's kind of funny how fast time flies when you're doing something that you enjoy. I gotta say, when I sit down and I'm just at the table and working on something, even if it comes out not exactly the way I want, or, I don't like it very much, it's still just, it's so therapeutic to just get something down on paper and just express yourself in your own unique way. So I'm doing kind of a lavender here, and I'm just kind of going in and mixing up some other colors too, trying to use up what I've got on the palette and giving it some different texture. And I'll also go in with a black fine liner and the white Jelly Roll pen at the end to bring out some more detail. I really like finishing up pages with some black and white for that extra contrast. It's kind of magical how it changes things. So, do you have a favorite painting or something that you didn't really plan on but just came out so much better than you imagined? And I think for me, it's actually the painting on my banner on my channel page is one of the first things I ever did on actual canvas. And I was trying to go for a little bit abstract, and I just love lavender. So it's actually a painting of that too. But I was trying some different things with textures and blotting paint and painting it on, taking it off, and adding layers. And I was just so tickled with how it turned out. So I always kind of keep it handy to remind me of, you know, how far people can come and you can really do some things that you're proud of. So I hope that these videos will be valuable to those of you who watch. And I'd really love to hear from you about any requests that you might have, or questions, or ideas for content. I want to make sure that I'm creating things that people are interested in seeing. And it's just, it's such a fun process, and just sitting down and putting something on paper. And I like to share that on here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what ideas people have, or even if you have some tips for me. Actually, I was thinking about the last video I made when I was talking about printing things on an inkjet printer, and how if you're going to gesso or put medium on it, it will tend to smear because of the ink. And so, one thing that I didn't mention that I probably should have is you could spray it with a fixative, and then it would be just fine to use in collage, and you can brush over it and it won't disturb the ink at all. And speaking of ink, I've got my fine liners out, and I am starting to put the details into the flowers. I've taken out some a different color, and I've taken out my pen, and I've already got my green leaves out there. And so I'm going over, I made some the flower centers, and now I'm kind of going around the petals and outlining some of my brush strokes to give the flowers a little bit more texture and contrast. And so I'll go around to the three of those and just go on there with the fine liner. And I really like these fine liners that I got on Amazon. I think it was a set of 8 or 9 pens, and a couple of them had brush tips. And it says on the description that they're permanent. I found that when you get them wet after applying, they do move just a little bit. They can smear slightly, but for the most part, they've been really great to use, and they don't have any drag. And they, when you're going over your paint, they don't have sort of broken lines. It's very solid, and they're nice to write with, and they've lasted quite a while too. I think the whole set was $11 or $12. Do you have any favorite pens that you like to use? I love to try new supplies, and I think I've got a couple lying around here that I haven't tried yet. So maybe I'll make a video about that too. I'm just kind of going over the leaves, being sort of sketchy. I'm not too careful about where I put my lines. I'm just sort of flowing where the paint kind of leads me. And I'm not careful about outlining, staying right on the border or anything like that. I really like the sketchy look. So that's what I'm kind of going for here. Although what I was originally going for was just a background. So here we are. I just couldn't tear myself away. And now I've got the white jelly roll and I'm going around my little lavender buds to give them some more definition. And again, like with the leaves, I'm just being really loose with it and just quickly just putting in my circles and following the line of the flowers. And I actually really like how this is turning out. It's not really what I had planned on. I just kind of sat down without any destination in mind, and sometimes those ones turn out to be pretty good. I do like experimenting with different things. So I'm just going around one more time with the leaves, and then I'm going to do the flower centers with the white jelly roll pen. And then I think we're going to call this good. I have to force myself to stop because otherwise I would just keep on drawing forever and then the original painting would slowly disappear under a layer of gel pen. So I think this is going to be good. But thank you so much for letting me share this with you today. And leave me a comment below if this video has been helpful or valuable to you at all. And I will see you in the next one. Keep creating.